Joining me today for Inspired Instructional Design Lessons from the Muppets is Michelle Lentz, Senior Learning Strategist here at ELB Learning. And we also have some other special guests there with Michelle. Yes. All right, so without further ado, I will let Michelle take it away.
Stephanie, what's your favorite Muppet?
Oh, definitely Cookie Monster.
Oh, that's a
Kind
great
of
choice.
more like my spirit animal than my favorite Muppet. Yeah.
I get that. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. And thank you, Stephanie. Welcome to Inspire Instructional Design Lessons from the Muppet. I'm Michelle Lentz. I was going to start us off with a little sing-along, but I've been informed I can't hear you all sing. So we're going to save the sing-along for the end of the session. And just a little about me. That's Sid. Yes, my background's not blurred or anything because you wouldn't be able to meet Sid and Kermit and everybody else. This is Sid the Muppet. I worked at Travana when it first started. If any of you use Lectora, which ELB now has as our product, I actually helped create that way back when. I worked at Oracle for a long time, and I worked at UPS, all within training and development and talent management. And now, of course, I'm at ELB since January, and Sid came with me. And you'll be learning a little more about Sid as we go through. So we're going to start out and just this whole webinar is really about thinking differently. And that's really how I want you to approach it. So we're going to take some basic design thinking principles and we're going to apply them to what we do every day as instructional designers. Jim Henson applied a lot of these in his own work, whether he knew it or not. And so I'm using that framework of his career to help explain these concepts in just a really fun way, because we want to have fun, right? So throughout the session, I'm going to look to you all to help tie it into our real life experiences. So we'll be using the chat and we will see what we can come up with. And that brings me to Muppet Moments. So we have 4 Muppets here. Fozzie, Kermit, Animal, and Piggy, on the off chance you're not familiar. And each of these will be representing a different section of what we're talking about. And then I want you to chime in on the chat and just let me know, how the question I'm asking you during each Muppet moment really is affecting what you're doing now. I want you to share with me your experiences because we can all learn from each other. So first, a poll, our first poll. Stephanie, do you make that magically appear?
Yes, I do, with all of my magic Zoom power.
I love magic. Okay, so everybody, if you just take a couple seconds and let me know, what Muppet are you feeling today? So are you feeling more Piggy? Are you feeling like Animal? Maybe you're the Swedish Chef. And while we're doing an other, type in chat, and I see Sue put in Janice. I love it, Janice. Named after Janis Joplin. One quick little piece of trivia about the Swedish Chef. Both Frank Oz and Jim Henson, both one played his right hand, one played his left, and they never knew what the left or the right hand was going to do. So anytime you saw the Swedish Chef on the Muppet Show, it was totally, they didn't know which one was what they were going to do with the hands, which is why the Swedish Chef is just so doing whatever. Okay, let's see, where have we got? We have 23% Kermit and 23% Swedish Chef. Oh, goodness. Okay. Some Fozzie, some animals. I bet Betty was animal. I saw her in there. Miss Piggy, yes, always fashionable and in vogue. And of course, others. We've got Grover and Sweetums. Now, there's a rare Muppet. Rolf, also my favorite. Celine. Dr. Teeth. Yes, everybody should go watch Muppets Mayhem on Disney Channel. It's not for the kids. Big Bird. Yeah, we've got some great ones in here. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So my favorite Muppet is Rolf. And I have an original Rolf puppet here from, let's just say, the early 70s, probably about 78, I guess, and I guess the late 70s. So he's pretty old. Um, and these pictures, this one at the bottom is actually from when I lived in Atlanta. We went to the Puppet Museum, which is the puppet part of it was actually sponsored by Jim Henson. So there are some really great Muppet exhibits. Rolf is one of the oldest Muppets, and he was the first one with a professional career because he worked for Jimmy Dean Sausages, which is kind of appropriate for a dog, but he had to quit that job later when Miss Piggy came along. So, another poll. What do you think Jim Henson's major was in college? So, was it studio art? Was it home economic, theater, or English?
We're getting some pretty divided responses here. Obviously, no one knew there was going to be a quiz at the beginning of this webinar.
Well, this is it. We're done with the quizzes after this, everybody.
All right. Almost everyone has filled this out, so I'll show the results. Those are the guesses.
So English. Okay, as an English major, I really appreciate that. But what came in here, not in a close second, well, 45% English, 25% home ec. Home ec was actually his major. And that was because he wanted to learn how to sew because he made puppets. So he didn't find a major in obviously puppetry, but he went to the next best thing for him. And it's actually how he met his wife. And Michelle home ec was a major back in the 60s. So there we go. Now, with that in mind, let's move forward. Today, we're going to talk about empathy, iteration, visual thinking, reuse, illusion, and then we're going to wrap up by talking about stepping outside your instructional design bubble. So we'll start with empathy. And the really important thing here is to know your audience. So in the chat, can you all tell me how you define empathy in instructional design?
Everyone's afraid to put their answer in. They don't want to get it wrong.
Well, relatability, that's great. Relating to their experiences. What do people want to learn? How can I help? Right. Understanding the story someone is trying to tell. Deep empathy from the learner. Right. Okay, so you all obviously have a pretty empathetic bunch here. So I see empathy in a couple ways. As trainers, we need to empathize with our learners psychologically and really try and understand where they're coming from. When I worked at Oracle, I wrote a lot of M&A courses, mergers and acquisitions. And so you try to keep the language very warm and welcoming because in that case, the learners may not be overly excited to join the new company, right? So you really have to have empathy for how they're feeling. In this example on the screen, Jim Henson and his team wrote for both kids and adults. And anyone who has seen the original Muppet Show knows that that particular script was woven in between both. There were things there for the kids, there was ridiculousness, and I was a kid when I watched it. But rewatching it as an adult, there's a lot there for us too. Now there's the Fraggles, and which I think is on HBO, and of course Muppets Mayhem, which if you like 70s rock, it's on Disney Channel. So new learners to high performers, you need to talk to everybody when you're empathizing, when you're learning about your learners. So don't just use your SMEs as your SMEs, use your learners as your SMEs. What do they need to learn? So peer around the corners and talk to different levels of learners about their particular frustrations. Because a new employee's frustration or a new user of the software is very different from the engineer who's been using that software for a long time. I like to say we all need to be Kermit. Kermit can talk to kids, and Kermit can talk to Jimmy Fallon, which there are very few kids awake watching Jimmy Fallon, I hope. So Kermit knows how to talk to everybody. So we all need to have a little bit of Kermit in us as we're creating our training. So Muppet moment number 1 with Kermit. So let's chat. What is an example of when you were Kermit and designing training, or you were really getting to know and spending time with your learners and their specific issues, and maybe you didn't and you should have. So if everybody can give me an example, can people raise their hand, Stephanie? And we can call on them if they want to speak up.
People can raise their hands, and then I have the power to unmute them if they want to share their thoughts.
Me, as the all-powerful producer, yes. If you raise your hand and you want to share your experience out loud, Stephanie can unmute you and you can share it with all of us. So just...
I know we are getting some answers in the chat.
Yes.
So far, I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Don't forget, everybody, put your drop down on everyone so everybody can see your great answers. Although Stephanie and I do love them.
But we love them, but everyone else would love them even more.
Exactly.
So all right. Answers there in the chat.
Yes. Fantastic. All right. So let's anything else? I know it takes a little while to type this stuff. I'm going to give you a little bit of time. I reach out after a training session to check for understanding and get feedback to change the presentation. Yes. New employee orientation. Yes. Fantastic example. Yes. Jennifer says she's doing any new employee training orientation. She's the biggest cheerleader for the company then, and she's really channeling Kermit. We all need to channel Kermit, right? I mean, he's right here. All need to channel Kermit. Yes. Jennifer Pickering, redesigning training materials created by SME to work better for new hires. Yes. Yes, systems training, always, because you're going to run the gamut between those who know it and installed it, basically, and those who have to change their whole job because of it. Don't use acronyms that they don't know yet. I worked at UPS for a while, and we had more acronyms there. We actually had an acronym glossary that you had to look up. But I always said, when you work for an acronym, you're going to have a lot of acronyms. Yes. All right, we've got some great answers here. Thank you so much. We've got a couple more of those. Okay. So, iteration. So, I bet there are a lot of you who are in small training teams with a small budget and not a lot of resources. So, Jim Henson was, after he graduated with a degree in home ec, a struggling puppet maker. What do you do when you want to do puppets? So he decided he was going to he didn't have a lot of money. So he took an old felt coat of his mother's, a green felt coat, 2 ping pong balls, and a Sharpie. And there you have the original Kermit from the Smithsonian, actually. And he was made out of his mother's green felt coat. So 1955, Kermit number 1. By 1965, Jim Henson is getting some TV spots here and there, mostly ads and some other little sections on morning shows and things. But Kermit at this point now has a sweater, but he doesn't have his little collar yet. By 1969, Kermit is naked, but he does have his collar. We don't really see Kermit usually wearing clothes unless it's for a holiday. 1978, this is the Kermit we all know from the Muppet Show. So this is classic Kermit. 1981, the Muppet movie is his, I don't know, is it a nose? Has gotten a little flatter. And then 2005, he was made out of brighter felt. Through today, he hasn't really changed much. But I guarantee there are a lot of Kermits sitting around in the Creature Shop or Disney Studios. And here is my point, though. Share before it's perfect and keep improving upon your creations. So Kermit has gone through a lot of plastic surgery, as we see. And I have always been a proponent of work agile, work fast. And even if it's not right, you've probably got to hit an impossible deadline. Even if it's not perfect, put it out there and just keep improving on it every day. I can't tell you how many things that I have created over the years that I just kept improving on. Websites are a great example of that. I'm constantly out there updating websites. So using an iterative process really lets you, your SMEs, your reviewers, everybody have access to things. You can use things and they become more perfect as you go along. So, Muppet moment. What examples can you give for iterating for a specific population? Maybe before something's fully realized, you put it out there anyway. So raise your hand if you want to share with us or type it in the chat. I'll give you a few minutes. Lots of felt surgery. Yes. Storyline allows for amazing iterative collaboration. Piloting programs, yes, I call those pie slices. And it's always good to try one little slice and then keep going and making it better. A great example. Asana with rules and workflow. I swear by a lot of project management. I am a Kanban board girl myself. All using games from ELB Training Arcade to see how they would be used. It's fun just to play them. It's Jeopardy is still my favorite. Any other thoughts? I think a couple more seconds. Yeah, Adam, you and me both. Adam was saying he likes to present extemporaneously, and every time he does a class, it gets tighter and better. And I'm actually guilty of the same thing. I do that a lot when I'm training. Just gets better and better as I go, and I tend to be off script a lot. All right. Thank you, everybody. I love the participation. Oh, Andy. Release, focus group, release. Real agile there. All right, visual thinking. So visual thinking is a way to organize your thoughts and improve your ability to think and communicate. Now, this is Dave Gray, who's just really great with brain stuff, if you haven't read any of his books. But this is a way of going beyond the linear world of the written word. So I swear by using a pencil and paper. I really do. I am incredibly techie. I swear by technology. It's going to change the world, but I still use a pencil and paper. So Jim Henson, this is from the museum, again, brought his imagination to life through illustrations, graphics, television, and puppetry. He began his work with doodles, drawings, and sketches. So, just like, well, I should say I'm just like Jim in that I pick up a pencil all the time. My doodles aren't this good, though. He was already doodling Kermit sitting on a wall, which is an image we saw earlier. Kermit had the sweater on, no collar. Um, so I used to teach a web design class, and I made my students sketch out by hand their entire site, because then we could erase, we could scratch things out, and it was a very just personal process to figure out how they were going to do their sitemap and what was going to be in the site. And it always, no matter what I tried, it always worked better for them and for me with paper and pencil. So, and somebody just said this, Michelle said this in the chat, sketching your storyboards. So this is, if any of you have seen the Muppet movie, there's a rather famous scene where Kermit and Piggy are bicycling. This was really hard for them to pull off because Muppets generally don't have legs and they don't ride bicycles. And there was no CGI then. They weren't using special effects. They were literally just using puppets and strings and everything else. So this is Jim Henson storyboarding that particular scene. Of course, down here in the corner, he's got question marks. How am I going to do this? So he sketched out his storyboard. Here's another storyboard from an early commercial where poor Kermit, early Kermit, gets crunched because it's easy to step on a frog, I guess. So for Clausen's bread, poor Kermit. So my friend Edie actually shared Dr. Haley Lewis with me, and you can find her on LinkedIn and at her site, halopsychology.com. She does sketch notes, and I love these. She's just using markers, and she's visualizing professional things. She's a psychologist, so in this case, she's looking at relationships and structure. This is the Wiseboard 6-box model, environment, and so you can see here how this helps you think and visualize and put things in the perspective you need. Clark Quinn, if any of you are familiar with him, used to, I don't know if he still does this. This is from 2022's DevLearn. He mind mapped out one of the keynotes as it was happening. He tends to do these live. So using some sort of software, he drew out exactly what the keynoter was talking about. This one's my new favorite. This is a tool I learned about from Scott, who works with me, and this is Loopy, and it's at this site, ncase.me/Loopy, and I just did a little video of it, but it's for systems thinking, and just to really help you, because this isn't just static. So you're visualizing things like on the mind map, but taking the mind map one step further, everything moves. Loopy is this wonderful open source free tool you can go use. And I just love this. So you can, any of your systems and things you need to map out, a really great way to show what's going where, when. And this is the HR causal loop from System Dynamics in HR. So we can probably all relate. Oops. There we go. So I'm going to move forward a little bit and talk about reuse, recycling. So the Creature Shop uses puppets that are called anything Muppets. And they're actually also called whatnots. Sid is an anything Muppet. Sorry, Sid. Sid is made of Velcro and felt. Sorry, buddy. This is Sid. His ears are attached. That's about it. And of course, we can change his clothes, but we do not need to trip down the Muppet. So, as you can see, the creature shop would have all these eyes. They would have piping, cotton, different body types. I happen to have in my collection many of these Muppets. They are all orange except one that is blue. Still looks the same though. Glasses, everything you can imagine. So the Muppet I'm showing here is actually Lenny. Lenny is naked on the couch. Lenny, Sid, that's Jimmy Buffett Muppet that I had made. As you see, they're all the same. Sorry, Sid. You can create whatever you want by using the same, obviously, template, but you're reusing things. And that's someone Edie just said Muppet Mr. Potato Head. And that's very much what this is. As you can see, Jimmy and Sid are pretty close to identical, but their noses and hair are different and things. So there's a lot you can do with the little pieces to make changes. So Muppet moment. Tell me about a time in the chat, or again, you can raise your hand, speak out. What ways do you reuse things now? Let's think beyond templates. What else are you reusing? And so what else is there? Templates, we know templates. What else? Character pictures and voices. It's really great to have continuous characters through things, right? Icons. So the beauty of reuse is that people get accustomed to your look and feel. So your learners aren't going to be surprised. They always know where your buttons are. Script layout. Yes. Reuse is the basis of brand. Well, Betty just summed that up. Cadence to the learning activities. Yes. Gridding. What else? Catchphrases. Waka, 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 right? Commonly used course goals and quiz questions. Yes. Color palette. Very much so. Call to action. Yes, these are great. Okay. Excuse me while I move some Muppets out of my way. Here we go. They're taking over the desk. All right. Things you want them to remember. If you didn't document, it didn't happen. Yes. Yes. All right. So the art of illusion. Filming this was very difficult. We've all seen this intro, I'm sure, where Kermit's sitting on a log, playing a banjo and singing in the water surrounded by trees. So it was a real log and it was in the water and it was not that easy because Jim Henson was under the water. He wanted this scene. And so he built it. It looks like an old tin, like a space capsule from Lost in Space or something. It's like a space capsule from the 60s, I think, how we would imagine it. And he got in there underwater and stuck his hand out and sang. And this way, he had air. They rigged it so that he had air, but his hand was still out. So he was underwater, perfectly dry, singing along, doing his Kermit voice. And Kermit was up above playing the banjo and sitting on a log. And Jim Henson had a screen in there. And so he could see what Kermit was doing. once you start getting into this, you realize that a lot of these larger Muppets or strange setups like this, there was always a screen that they could see um, somehow attached to them somewhere so they could see what was going on. So that's how this was filmed. And I bring this up, perception versus reality. Think about all the things you do every day so that your learners can have a seamless experience, whether it's so many variables and things that are hidden away and making chat gpt magically appear in your authoring tool, or and answering actually, so you're interacting directly with chat gpt, which works in like Torah. You can you can do anything. There's just so much you can make happen. Go out to the web, you can make things appear. Adam just commented on PowerPoint can do illusions. I love this. With animations, hidden elements and reveals, all of those things, hotspots, all of that stuff takes a long time. Think about that, instructional design hours to build something for this 10-minute experience for your learner. So always just think of the perception versus reality, and what can you do to make even a better illusion for your learner? What can you do to make things magic? So step outside your bubble. This is really, I think, one of the most important lessons in instructional design. We get really hung up on Patrick and Bloom's and all these other theories and models. And I think we need to look outside instructional design sometimes. Sometimes we're just stuck. Well, look outside your bubble. I actually worked in marketing for a while. I was a director of marketing for a digital scrapbooking company. And I learned a lot about marketing and I was able to apply how people learn to how people buy. And it applied. And coming back into learning after my little foray outside of it, I was able to apply things I learned in marketing over to instructional design. I think user experience design is a great place for us to look for inspiration. In the chat, tell me, where else would you look for inspiration? Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. I fully agree with that. Monty Python, quilting. I'd love to hear more about quilting and how we can look to that for instructional design. Glitter bombs, traveling, games my kids play. That is fantastic. I think there's so much rooted in play for learning. We can get so much out of that. Nature, anime. If you don't plan a quilt out in advance, it's going to be a mess. Well, there we go. Okay. I borrow so much from the YouTubers my son introduced me to. Right, right. The influencers out there know a lot that we don't, and we can learn from them. Video games. Learn what you need to defeat the monster at the end. I love building Legos. Yes, I'm a big fan of Legos for play. This is a little Lego Serious Play duck. Um, love that. Echoing video games. There's a lot of exploring you can do in video games. So I'm not a big video game player, but having watched them and played a few here and there, I was always more interested in exploring the world than I was trying to achieve something, which is why I'm not very good at video games. Okay. Choose your own adventure. We actually did a e-learning course that was a choose your own adventure once. That is actually great inspiration. Open-ended games, cooking. Yes, cooking. I love that. You guys are coming up with some really, really great things. Okay. So I want to know before I continue on, do you want to put questions in the chat? Or I think Stephanie has a Q&A thing. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me or you want to ask our very fun and knowledgeable group here, I really like what Urmila just typed. Fun feedback after getting answers right. You're a glitter bomb of glory. You're a fun group. So this is your chance to ask questions. What do you want to know? Ask me. We can ask the group. Again, there's a Q&A, or you can ask in the chat. You can just keep sharing your experiences. Apparently, I'm gonna have to start playing video games. There's a heckling robot in one. Apparently, I have to play that. No questions. Nope. Adam, please address the need to do covert creativity to get past the gatekeepers. I used to call that guerrilla instructional design. Because I always thought about like guerrilla fighters in the woods sneaking up on people. For me, it was a way of, and I did this at Oracle many times. We would come up with an idea and socialize it small group, socialize it a little wider until it was socialized enough to I could present it to executive leadership, let's say, and have stats, right? Because I think data is your key. This worked, and here's why, and here's how many people have been using it when you weren't looking. And I did that. I'm guilty of having done that quite a lot. I often have that philosophy of let's just do it and we'll pay for it later. We'll answer questions about it later. So, oh, there is a question in the Q&A. What's the most common mistake that you see in training? I think we get so wrapped up in create that we often forget the learner. We get the learner at a top level, but I don't think we go down far enough into empathy. Oops. So I think we really need to spend more time with our learners. I think we need more focus groups. And I know we don't always have time, right? We're often like given something and 3 days later, people want to see it in review. But I still think there's an opportunity, even if we just do surveys via email or something, pop something into a survey monkey to find out what your learners really need. And I think it's just like, oh, it's new people. Let's just push this out the door. That's our audience, but we don't learn enough. And I think that's the biggest. So storyboarding. So I'm going to put this out to the crowd. Rachel would like to know, or sorry, Amy would like to know, the chat moved on me. Amy would like to know what your recommendation for tools to use when storyboarding besides just paper and pencil. I've told you I'm kind of a paper and pencil kind of girl when it comes to that kind of thing. You can storyboard within a lot of tools now. So anyone have suggestions on storyboarding? the back of a piece of paper that I don't need anymore. If you could only see how many of those I have here that I've scribbled things on. Um, Good old PowerPoint. I think we have all done PowerPoint storyboards in our life. Um, do you think it is okay to have the class do a disc assessment on day one? So here's my feelings on that with all of these assessments, and I'm Hogan certified. So I think it depends on how you're going to use it. For instance, I think as pre-work in a leadership development class, it's great to have a 360 done before that so you know what you're going to work on. Hogan's, again, you learn a lot about yourself. Disc, same thing. You learn a lot about yourself, and I think if you're going to use that and there's a way for them to apply it in that training, I think it's a great idea. But my one caveat with that, and I'm a stickler on this, is have someone who is certified in whatever assessment, your personality assessment you're using, debrief it. Don't just hand them a sheet of paper that gives them a rundown of things. If you've ever seen a Hogan, that can be really scary. So make sure that someone who knows how to debrief the personality assessment debriefs everybody one-on-one. And that it just eliminates a lot of unnecessary misunderstanding. I've seen that go so wrong if you don't have a debrief. When we think about iterative design thinking as it relates to developing a series of trainings, how can we use that as a look back to improve the next training in a series? Well, lessons learned, right? I think back of all my lessons learned, and every time I'm building training, I'm building off of whatever has come before. So putting together a leadership development course, I'm going to look back at other leadership development courses I've built and what worked and what didn't. I'm going to take into account new things. Maybe it's assessments, maybe it's coaching. But I'm always going to look back at what worked and what didn't. Because, sometimes if something works, it's not broke, you don't need to fix it. But sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to bring it into the century too. So just always look back at what you did and take your lessons learned. I think every time we do a big project, we should have like a big debrief afterwards and figure out what worked and what didn't, so that we have at least a mental library, if not a documented library, of what we've done. Don't throw everything out when you only need to redo some things. Very, very, very true. Using existing assets, great asset is a way to get the foundation built, leaving more time to build ideas to improve upon the foundation. Exactly. I think also iteration is so important right now as we're all working with AI. If you've played it all with writing prompts, you have to iterate a lot to get what you want. So iteration's okay, and you keep building on that. That daisy chaining you do to get your correct prompt in AI is a perfect example of the Kermit effect and how something builds so you finally get what you want. Although who knows if Kermit is in his final iteration? Who knows where he'll be in 5 years? Okay. Any more questions? Kermit in space. I think Kermit has actually already been to space. It was called Muppets in Space, and I think it was from the early 2000s. Or maybe that was just Gonzo. I can't quite remember. Yes. Okay. Next, one last question for you all. What did you learn today? What are you going to take away from this? And yes, there will be a link to the recording for all of this. Pigs in space. I forgot. Selena's right. There was pigs in space. And yes, there will be a recording, everybody. I just got that affirmative. Reuse what you have. What else have you learned today? What are you going to take back from the Muppets and apply to your work? Accept chaos and work around it. I want to know where to buy those Muppets. Well, it used to be FAO Schwartz, but I don't know if they're still around. I think they're still around in Rockefeller Center, and I don't know if they're anywhere else. It's okay to be a little wacky and weird in service to innovation and creativity. And I think that is a brilliant lesson learned here. Look at Jim Henson surrounded by all of his creations, including off to the side, the Jim Henson Muppet, who I believe was actually a guitar player, and he sang in a little Muppet band. Uh, Not the Mayhem, a different Muppet band. Getting people more comfortable with the idea you're having fun with what you're doing. I think that's really important. Earlier, someone, Adam, I think, said we take ourselves too seriously. And sometimes training is life and death. I've seen training for airlines, that's life and death training. Training when I was at an electric company, life and death training. I have a friend who worked for Williams Sonoma, and she used to say, it's pots and pans, not life and death. So perspective, I think, is something that's very important. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yes, beauty, not life and death. Some would say it, but not really. It's okay to use paper and pencil to plan ideas. Yes. I have a whole collection of fancy pencils just for this. Oh, I think, Jennifer, you have to find a way to bring in the rainbows. Look around the corners, talk to your users, see what you can do to bring some joy into your training. Get visual when planning. Yes, there's so many tools to do that. Love what you are doing and radiate that to the learners. That's the truth. Play is how people learn. Again, Legos. I fully agree. What else are you going to take back to your job? Trying something new and different with smaller groups and using that learning to educate upwards. Guerrilla training. Laugh at yourself and the learners will respect you more. I hope so, because I'm constantly laughing at myself. Caring is important across the board. That goes back to my statement on empathy. For me, out of all these things, empathy is the most important. Empathy for our learners. They can be in so many situations that they have to get training. Maybe it's a new software that could eliminate their job. There's a lot of caring we need to do for our learners. Having fun is motivating, and finding ways to motivate people is how we get engaged. Yes. And hopefully you all are having fun. And we're about to have fun one more time. Now, here's the beautiful thing for all of you. I want you all to sing with me. You all are probably going to hear me sing. So sorry. But no one can hear you sing. So I want everybody to sit at their desk or wherever you happen to be sitting right now. And I want you to watch. The words are on the screen. You cannot tell me you don't know the words, because while there's not a bouncing ball, it's a rainbow of words. Um, and sing. If you don't sing, I will know. Of course, now I have to sing. It's a little embarrassing. Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
And
What's on the other side? Everybody, back and forth.
Rainbows.
If you were all on
are
camera, I would
visions,
expect to see everybody
but
swaying.
only illusions, and rainbows
Guys, with
have
Kermit.
nothing to hide.
He had a banjo.
So we've been told, and some choose to believe it.
Don't worry, I won't make you go through the whole
I know
song.
they're wrong. Wait
Wait
and
and see.
Someday
Everybody.
we'll find it. The rainbow, connection. The lovers, the dreamers,
and me. One more verse.
That
every wish
would be heard
and answered. Just so we can get to Kermit on the log.
Morning
star.
Somebody
thought of that.
And
someone believed it.
Look
what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing?
And what
do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection,
the lovers,
the dreamers, and me.
All of us on.
All right, I hope you all sang. I feel that many of you all sang. Yeah, Adam, he loves it. He needs to look at the strings and make sure he's doing it right. Well, remember, Jim Henson is under there, underneath the water, trying to make this happen. I want to thank everybody for joining. I totally sang along. Look at all these people who sang along. Wait, I wasn't done. Stephanie, if I PDF these, can we send them out, the slides?
Absolutely, yes. Send me the PDF. I will put it in the email with the recording link, and it'll be in the description of the recording on YouTube as well, so that everybody can get these.
Fantastic. And everybody, there's the ELB Learning website, my LinkedIn. And I got to meet Cookie Monster at South by Southwest several years ago, and I think it was the high point of my life. I also met his puppeteer.
Wow, way to make us all feel
bad. Thank you, everybody. You get about 5 minutes back. I hope you all have fun. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend ahead.